Hey, welcome guys. I'm good, Laura. How are you? Hope you're doing well. Thanks for joining, guys. Gonna give it a few minutes for people to tune in. Bro, it is cold. I don't know why Cape Town has just, I feel like winter has just suddenly arrived. Okay, I've got to find out how to add you to the live. Guys, I'm so excited for this live.
Hey man,
Hey,
how are you?
I'm
Hey, good to
good, bro.
see
How are
you.
you?
I'm good, man. Really good to
I'm
see
so
you.
excited for this chat. Thank you so much for having time for us.
It's a pleasure, man. It's a pleasure. I'm happy I can join you.
How are things going that side? Where are you at the moment?
I'm in Accra.
Okay.
I'm in Accra, but I live in on the outskirts of the town. I live in a little fishing village.
Okay. That's awesome.
Far from the madding crowd.
Honestly,
My,
before this virus hit, Ghana was my #1 place to visit this year. It was top of my list.
fantastic,
Yeah,
fantastic. And we'll be happy to have you once this is over.
I'm very excited. Yeah. How are things that side? How is the
No,
virus
we're
there?
good.
Is it
We're good.
fine?
I'm trying to. Yeah, yeah, I mean, we've lost about 30 people so far.
Sure.
Had about 6,000 cases, but
Okay.
yeah, I think compared to what's happening in other places, we're fine. Yeah,
Good. Are you guys also
yeah.
shut down borders and everything?
Yes, we have. So our borders are shut down.
Okay.
We actually did a 3-week lockdown of the three
Okay.
major cities.
Mm-hmm.
But now we don't have a lockdown, but you can't have gatherings of more than 25 people.
Sure, that makes
So
sense.
yeah, so churches, funerals, parties, mosques,
Mm.
none of those social gatherings.
Yeah, we just had here in South Africa, the president announced yesterday that churches were opening up again, I think slowly for to allow 50
No,
people. And I saw your post the
uh,
other day and I just felt the same way. I'm like, is this necessary right now?
it is not. It is not. It is not. I mean, I think it may sound controversial, but I think churches are doing that because of money.
Mm. Yeah,
Because
sure.
especially the traditional ones, because
Yeah,
they had a system.
yeah,
You come to church, you bring the offering.
yeah,
And they didn't really invest in other virtual systems. And this happens, and they
yeah,
have
of course.
salaries to pay and
Yeah,
overheads and families to feed, and the money isn't coming in, so they're under
sure.
pressure.
Look, bro, just got to realize we are the church. The church can't be shut down.
I can tell it's cold in Cape Town, huh?
It is freezing, bro. It's like winter
Oh,
arrived
whoa.
last week and I'm not
Oh,
used to it.
whoa.
Yeah, so
Whoa.
I got all my winter clothes shipped here like yesterday, and so finally
Wow.
I'm ready for winter.
Fantastic. Because I saw you wear this jacket in your Iceland video.
Yes.
And
But that was another
and
level. That was another
yeah,
level.
yeah.
Like
That
Cape Town
was
cold is
minus.
here, but Iceland
Uh-huh.
you're not gonna survive. It kills you.
I mean, that's why it's called Iceland, no?
Exactly,
And the
exactly.
name
You
should
should
tell you,
know.
Iceland. Yeah, yeah. Getting
No,
into
it's
ice.
why I moved down here. I'm like, I didn't move here for this winter weather, you know?
Cape Town is beautiful.
Yeah, it is. Anyway, I want you just to tell if anyone doesn't know who you are, can you give a short introduction? Just tell us, because I feel like you do everything. Like you're a photographer, you're a poet, you're a writer. Tell us what it is that you would say you do.
I mean, I think it can get confusing. So I
Mm.
like to, if I'm talking to a photographer, I'm a photographer.
Yes.
And I think most people know me as a documentary photographer.
Yeah.
Um, and that's what I think in 80% of situations I just say I'm a documentary photographer. Um, I was born in Ghana. I have a background in journalism.
Okay.
So I used to work in radio, so radio journalism and advertising.
Okay.
So I used to work for TBWA.
That's cool.
So my very early trips to South Africa was for that agency. I used to be
Oh,
a
wow.
copywriter,
What year was that
and
in?
oh, I left advertising in 2007.
Oh, sure. Okay. So that
Yeah,
was a
so
while
this
back
is a
now.
while back. Yes, yes.
Mm.
I left. I became a photographer full time in 2007. So that was
Okay,
when
wow.
I,
Yeah,
I
that's
quit
been 13
advertising.
years.
It's amazing how time flies, huh?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, it's amazing. It doesn't feel that long ago most of the time.
Mm.
Yeah, but that's me. So this is somebody with a journalism and advertising background who
Yeah.
works mainly as a photographer. Um, I I write sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
So I used to work in advertising. My core skill was copywriter. So I worked as a
Okay.
copywriter for
Okay.
years and then became creative director. But uh, and I started painting from when I was a kid. So I've always had, in fact, I became a photographer because I couldn't paint anymore. I was too busy when I worked in
Okay.
advertising
So you
that there
needed
was no
something
time.
quicker.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. But what most people know me for is photography.
Yeah, sure. Well,
Yeah.
I stumbled across your work because I think on the same day, maybe 5 or 6 different people forwarded me the article that was
Wow.
on Medium, that was
Wow.
the baggage that lives with you forever.
Ah,
So I stumbled across that the same time as I came across accounts like No White Saviors. And I was just, during lockdown even, I was just having my mind blown by this, like, you put into words the feelings that I had in my heart but couldn't express.
yeah.
And it was like this whole learning journey for me of coming across your work. And I was just, you just spoke so eloquently. And it's like, it's a message that I would be totally prepared to dedicate the rest of my days to, or the rest of my photography days to, which is that we need a new story and that
Yeah.
Africa needs a new story. And like, I
Yeah.
would love to hear more about your thoughts behind writing that article and how that all came to be.
So that's I mean, thank you for that, and I'm happy that that story spoke to you.
Mm,
So it's two things. A lot of, I mean, life itself is about balance. We live on this round ball that keeps spinning.
mm,
The day it goes out of balance, we are all tilting downwards. So everything in life should be about balance.
yeah.
And when I saw a BBC story that about 3,000 people had died in Italy,
Mm,
I was shocked. I mean, I knew that Italy was having a crisis with COVID-19. I had read reports that people were dying, but the videos we were seeing and the stories we were reading were people playing violins from their windows and people
yeah.
falling in love across across
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
balconies
Yeah.
and all these romantic stories. And I said, but where are the pictures? Where is journalism when you need it? Because
Yeah.
this is 3,000 lives lost.
Mm,
Where are the pictures? So
mm,
it was from that concern. And then as somebody who covered Ebola,
yeah,
I was
of
like,
course.
yeah, when Ebola happened, yeah, there were all these unsightly pictures. So
Mm,
Ebola was photographed to the other extreme,
yes.
and Italy's issue with COVID-19 was also at the other extreme.
Mm,
And I said, neither of it is good journalism.
okay.
Good journalism should keep you informed. It's not an advertising campaign. It's not a propaganda material.
Mm,
It doesn't have to blow anything out of proportion,
yeah.
but it shouldn't also downplay critical issues. And so that was what led to my writing 3,000 people dead, and where are the pictures? And depending on which side somebody stood on, they maybe were offended that I wanted to see gruesome photos. No, I've seen enough. As a
Yeah.
photojournalist, I've seen too many
Yeah.
bad things that I don't need to see anymore.
Yeah.
That's not what that's about. But I felt that we needed to have a conversation. It was about time because quite often also when I've spoken about how Africa was represented in imagery and in writing and in literature, you sound like an angry black man. You sound like an angry African. It's a very difficult conversation to have sometimes, depending on who you are
Yeah, if
talking
people
to.
aren't willing to receive it, then it
Yes,
becomes
yes.
very, yeah, people put that wall up.
Yes, because of the baggage. You see, I mean, let me use an imagery from painting. When somebody is given a blank canvas, whatever color you put on is the color. So most blank canvases will be white, plain, nothing on it. So if I run some yellow on it, it's yellow. Let's say I'm using oil. So if I run it blue, it's blue. If I run it green, it's green. But what happens is that when there is already paint on the canvas and it's wet, you run a new color and it mixes with the old one. So if there is blue and I run yellow on it, I get a green. If there is white and I run a red on it, I end up with a pink. And if I do this, I end up with a purple. And if I do that. So, and that's what happens with communication when there is baggage. Because of our common history as the people of the world, when you're saying something based on where the person is coming from, all these other wet colors are mixing up. So you're saying blue, but they're hearing green and yellow and pink and white.
So true.
And that's always complicated, and that's why so, I mean, a lot of people requested to have conversations with me on this, and I turned down.
Yeah.
This is, I think, about the second time I'm having this conversation.
That's such an honor.
Because because it's complicated, and you need to first establish trust, that I can trust this person with something this sensitive, and we can have this conversation without judgment.
100%.
Without judgment, and yeah, it's tricky.
But it's hard, not even for me, it's hard not to get frustrated. I think I've come to learn that we see everything through our own perspective, So I'm trying to really talk about something that's pressing on my heart to someone, but if they've only ever seen life through their own perspective, so for them to now see things through my eyes is sometimes impossible. And I'm trying just actually to step back and say, unless you're willing, unless you're open to have this conversation, then you're never going to see things the way I see them right now. Like, I'm not going to waste this energy on you because you're not ready for it. And it's such a frustration, though, and it's such a hard balance. I think when it comes to my work, like as a white male, as a foreigner, like with really pure intentions to tell a new story for this continent, like what advice would you give someone? Because reality is, like, we've done it wrong so many times. Like, one of my favorite quotes is one of my friends just said, "It's better if you just don't." It's been like, you're just adding to the mess. And I'm like, what would you say to someone like me? I've got pure intentions, but I want to tell that new story, but is there space for that?
I think there is. And I'll quote Maya Angelou. She was an African American writer who lived in Africa for a long time, and a very, very versatile polyglot. She spoke so many languages so well. And somebody asked her a very similar question because of, there are, for every movement, we've had allies. So, for example, if it's fighting apartheid in South Africa or fighting segregation in America or wherever, you would always have people from other races who come alongside you.
Yes.
For example, I've been an ally to feminist movements across the continent for years. I need to understand first and foremost that I'm not a woman, and there are many things I will never understand because I don't know what it means to be a woman.
Yeah.
And knowing where my boundaries are and respecting them empower me. That knowledge empowers me to be a better ally. So I respectfully step aside when I realize that this may be a bit much. and I
Okay.
apologize if I cause offense.
Mm-hmm.
Over time, trust is built to the extent where even when you cause offense, they trust you enough to know you didn't mean it that way. Your objective wasn't to offend,
Sure.
and knowing that has really helped me many times as an ally. But Maya Angelou said, "Do the good you know do the good you know to do, and when you know better, do better."
Sure. Yeah.
So, and I think that's the advice I'll give somebody like you. You have good intentions, you love the continent. I saw
Mm.
your footage from Malawi, and do them
Thank
as
you.
you
Yeah.
grow and as you learn better, as you get better, you do
Mm.
better.
Mm.
That's and I'll tell you why I say this, because people don't realize that as an African who is black,
Mm.
if I move a few kilometers from where I was born, I'm also a stranger. Because the language is different, the culture
Yeah.
is different. Ghana has officially, we recognize about 28 languages,
Sure.
but unofficially, I think we are close to 100.
Wow.
Nigeria
Yeah.
is about 200 languages. This is a continent of thousands and thousands of languages, and each language represents a culture.
Mm.
Each language represents a belief system, a certain worldview, and I may be black, Ghanaian, whatever, but I move a few kilometers away. I don't understand a word they say. I don't understand their belief system. I don't
Mm.
know what, but quite often the main difference is that when I show up knowing that I don't know, and I'm eager to learn, and I'm eager to question.
Sure.
Quite often where a lot of foreigners fail when they come to Africa is that they come thinking they know. They come thinking they are superior.
Mm.
It is that does them in most of the time.
Yeah.
It's that mindset of thinking they know. Because there is a lot in popular culture, popular Western culture, that compared to, I'll give you an example. So, for example, my tribe in Ghana is matriarchal,
Mm-hmm.
which means that the head of my family is a woman. It's been like that for thousands of years.
Okay.
So in 96 thereabouts, when did the Beijing conference happen? When the Beijing conference happened, then feminism became
Mm.
the item on the news. I'm like, do women still need more power?
Sure.
Because I grew up, it took me, no, I think Beijing was before 96, because it took me moving to the northern part of Ghana in 96 as a national service person
Okay.
to get to experience a proper patriarch, and to see the women being suppressed and bullied, and they
Yeah.
don't have a voice, and then I understood feminism. I understood why there was anger.
Mm.
But coming from my culture, growing up, if I needed anything, you go to your mom, inheritance. So family wealth. So you're talking land, you're talking heirlooms like gold, and
Yep.
proper family wealth goes from mother to daughter.
Okay.
It
Wow.
doesn't it doesn't run from father to son,
Wow.
and yeah, it's a different world system. So people, when I listen to a European talk about feminism with so much passion as if they know, I'm like, no, you don't know. We've been practicing,
Yeah.
women, empowered women who own their own money, own their own businesses, travel anywhere in the world. And this is the story of families like mine. The
Mm.
most powerful tribe in Ghana is the Ashanti or the Akan tribe.
Sure.
And the biggest kingdom is the Ashanti kingdom. Yes, the Ashanti kingdom is led by a king, but the kingmaker is actually the queen mother.
Wow.
The queen mother single-handedly decides who gets to be king. It's not a democracy, it's not an election. One woman single-handedly decides this king isn't doing a good job, so
Mm.
we are dethroning him. I'm appointing that one as king. So who actually rules in Ashanti kingdom?
Yeah.
It's the queen mother.
Of course.
But if you don't know, if you don't know this, you come into the culture, and based on something you've read from some explorer who was lying to look good and exaggerating everything, you come thinking you know and you understand
Yeah.
these people, but you don't know them. You don't understand anything about them. So the humility to come knowing that I don't know enough
Yeah.
and I have to be humble to seek first. That's something Stephen R. Covey writes in the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. It says, seek first to understand, then to be understood.
Yeah.
And I think that's the point
I
I'm
love
trying to
that.
make.
I love that. And the reality is, I mean, across the continent, there's so little when it comes to content. Like in
Yeah,
comparison to the rest of the world, we actually have such an opportunity because you can come in to so many different countries. Like when I came to Malawi, I had
yeah,
no idea what Malawi would be like. And so you arrive with a blank canvas. And
yeah,
most places you go in the world, they've been documented and there's been so much content written about them. You can just go on Google and you can say best sites in this place. You can't do that in Malawi. So you have
no,
actually an opportunity to arrive there with no prejudice, with no
yeah,
opinions of what it's going to be like, and just be open to understand and to see it fresh, you know? So I think
yes.
maybe we can see that as such a positive to arrive there with just this blank canvas of let's just learn as we go and not base it
It's
on what we've
important.
been told.
It's crucial. It's crucial because the moment you study, if you study classical literature and history and spend a lot of time in ancient books and ancient religions, if you dig deep, you discover that Western civilization is actually quite young,
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
and
100%.
in many ways still underdeveloped. In many ways still underdeveloped. But people aren't taught that in school, and so they come to life thinking they know. Listen, this is 2020. We are still figuring out how they built those pyramids. We are still
Oh
figuring
yeah.
out how they built those pyramids. You have tribes in Mali that have been worshiping Jupiter and some other planets that somebody discovered quite recently in Western civilization. And we always have these jokes about how so for example in Ghana we have this forest called the Kakum Forest. It's one of these national parks of sorts, and we have countless butterflies. And sometimes you have all these scientists who come and they discover a species and then they write an article about it, and then a new butterfly is discovered. But the local people who live in the
It's
forest,
been
and
there forever.
of course they know each
Yeah.
one and they have a local name for it, and they can tell you which one is poisonous if you touch it, and which one does what, and which one pollinates what plants. But yeah, it's 2020, and somebody will now come and discover them.
And
And
discover it, yeah.
yes, yes, and that's why when I speak to young Africans, I try to let them understand that the word authority comes from the word author. The first part of authority is author.
Yeah, sure.
So basically, whoever writes the story is right. So, and as you said, because the culture we inherited was mainly oral,
Yeah.
and we didn't invest so much. I mean, we've had written languages in Africa for centuries, but it was never the norm that it was mainly for leadership, But we have to understand that the world has changed and keeps changing. And the earlier we author our stories, the better. If we don't
Wow.
tell our stories, and good allies are always welcome. Man. Nobody does it alone.
Yep.
In another life also, I pastor a church, and
Okay.
I'll quote a scripture that says that it is not good for man to be alone. It says God created the world. He looked at man and said, "It is not good for the man to be alone." And a lot of people quote it in relation to marriage, because then he gave Adam Eve. But it is a very simple truth. No man is an island. Nobody is an island. We
Yeah.
all need
So
each other.
good.
And if we're going to progress, if we're going to become better, we have to
Yeah.
learn to look beyond all these artificial boundaries and really become one as a people, you know. And yeah.
Yeah. That leads me so nicely because I was going to ask you, how do you pair your faith with your work? I mean, often if it's photojournalism, I guess you have to often step back a little bit and have less of you and more of the news story that you're telling. But when perhaps it's not for journalism, how do you kind of pair your faith with your work?
I think that this is it's a very, very important question because I think as an artist, that has always been my struggle because art is about you, you know. So I paint. I think, let me turn this a bit. You see one of my paintings on the wall. It's
Yo, that's beautiful.
yeah, it's a boat, a canoe, or
Yeah.
I don't know what you call it.
Is that
Yeah.
on the lake near where you live?
Where I live, yes, on the
Yeah.
sea, yes,
Wow.
yes. It's I live by the Atlantic Ocean, and when you paint, it's all about you. It's about how I feel and you know the color, what I want, and so you develop a big ego as an artist. It's always about you,
Yeah.
and yet I think that at the pinnacle of art is invisibility. So I'll give you an example. So when you hear a song, and a really, really good song, and you don't know who sang it, all you hear is a great song. And after experiencing the song, you ask, who did this? Who sang this? So the identity comes after the gift, after the talent, you know. It's
Sure.
But I don't know if you're into music, but you know how sometimes somebody is trying too hard? They are over singing, you know, they are retching and
yeah, adding those little bits. I know what you mean. Yeah.
yeah, you know, and it's the same with this whole thing with you as an artist or you as a journalist, you as a storyteller. The earlier you learn to get out of the way, the faster you grow as an artist or as a
Yeah.
journalist. Well,
I
I
love
think
that.
this actually cuts across all creative expressions, you
It
know.
does.
So when I'm on assignment, it's never about me. What's the story? What's the story here? It's the single most important question. What's the story? Am I capturing the story? And that is what keeps me engaged and busy. Because also I know that stories are quite often complicated. So I'm never satisfied with what seems to be the story. I always want to dig deeper.
The
I
real
want people to
story.
get more comfortable to the real story, and
Yeah.
it's always layered, you know. So you peel a bit like an onion. You peel layer after layer after layer, you know. And to do that well, you have to quickly learn to disappear. You have to become invisible. Just make it about the story. And if it comes to doing well as a commercial photographer or doing well as a photojournalist, I think this has been my superpower, that it's never about me. Send me a brief, what do you need? If I want to do something artsy for myself, I'll make time and do my own work, you know,
Yeah.
and shoot in black and white or green and blue or whatever
Yeah.
fancies me. That's for me.
I guess
You
in a
know, that's
way,
for
but
me.
I guess in a way that is the outworking of your faith, though, because what you're saying is this isn't about me. And that is
Yeah,
ultimately what we call the life we're called to live is a
of
sacrificial
course.
life where we
It's
say,
the
actually,
same
it's not
thing.
for me.
Yes, it's the same thing. It's but I think the humility, that growth and humility comes from my faith.
Yeah.
Because if all you are is an artist, everybody tells you get a big ego.
Yeah.
You know, get a big ego, make it about yourself. Your opinion is important. And then you read Apostle Paul and he says, it's not I who live, but Christ who lives in me, you know. And it is he who causes me to will and to do according to his good pleasure. You
Yeah.
know, it says, I count it all as done. Every accomplishment you know, everything I've achieved, everything I've been able to achieve in this life, it's done. It's totally
nothing.
rubbish.
Yeah.
It's nothing, absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
It's easier said than done. You know,
100%.
much easier said than done, but it's important.
Yeah. And I guess when your faith is such a huge part of who you are, whether you know it or not, it's going to outwork its way through your work anyway. I
It
really
will, it
believe that.
will. It will also, I think that at the core of the Christian faith in particular is the fact that, especially as you grow in this faith, I'll give you an example. So, you know how Christians are taught to believe that we are Christ in society.
Mm.
So we go and we are kind to the poor, to the needy, to the widow, to the orphan, to the underprivileged, to the homeless. So we are Christ to these people. We are the best example of Christ they may ever meet.
Yeah.
And yet when we hear Jesus speak, he says the opposite. In Matthew 25, when he tells the story of the judgment today, he says, I'll separate the sheep from the goats, and I'll say to the sheep, I was in prison and you visited me. I was sick, I was hungry, I was poor, I was naked. In other words, the poor, if you want to see Christ in the physical in 2020, he's the poor, he's the marginalized, he's the weak, he's the vulnerable, he is the prisoner. So the prisoner is Christ. And if you say you love him, everything you would do in the person, if you were to meet Christ in person, how you treat him with respect and how you'd kowtow and how you do that. He says, well, that's me. I'm the prisoner. I am the sick. I am the poor. And when you understand that, anytime you pick up your camera to photograph somebody, you see Christ in them. They don't have to be born again. No, they don't have to be Christian. Everybody, he says, I am the prisoner. He didn't say I'm the Christian prisoner.
That's so good.
And when you understand that, when you see Christ in the other, it humbles you.
Yeah. And then it's gonna be second nature to make sure that the way you're photographing this person is doing so with dignity and with respect. And then that just leads so nicely into like, how do we change the story of this continent? Well, you photograph people the way you treat them. You do so with respect and you do so with dignity. It should be empowering, as opposed to the way people have done so in the past, where it's disempowering. And it's a way, as I think you write in your article in so many words, is you don't want to be photographed in that worst moment,
No,
But I think as a journalist or as a photojournalist, how do you, it's such a fine balance between telling the truth in your work, but also photographing people in a dignifying way. For instance, there's so many real issues that you will have to deal with. Like, there are too many in South Africa, but you talk about like the poor treatment of foreign nationals, for example.
Yeah.
How would you go about photographing this in a way that is dignifying? Because these people almost shouldn't be captured in their worst moment of their lives. So how do you tell that story, or do we not? Is that not something that I should be telling?
Oh, it's important. It's really important to tell those stories, but they are stories about people. So, and that's the important part. Who is this person? What is their name? And that is the challenge. In fact, this is why I normally will call myself a documentary photographer and not a photojournalist.
Okay.
Because as somebody who grew up in the news business, there is never enough time. So you deal in statistics. It's just a photo of somebody dying, a baby dying. That baby has a name. A fallen soldier. Who is this soldier? What's going on? And when you have to tell bad stories or terrible stories, and you will take your time to get to know who you are telling the story about and properly give them an identity, let them know this is the person. Anybody who sees the story is confronted with the reality that they are dealing with a person. These are people, these are mothers losing their babies, these are people bleeding, these are human beings dying. What photojournalism has done historically is that, it's just about the aesthetics and the numbers, and they are like details in a landscape, some landscape photograph. But if you take your time, and also you will notice that that is the harder part of the job.
Yeah.
Putting your long lens aside, the longest
Yeah.
lens I have is an 85 millimeter, and I use it maybe once a year.
I love that. That is the best thing to hear, especially when I was looking at buying new lenses. I'm like, I don't need anything more zoomed than an 85.
Yeah, yeah. The longest I have is an 85. I use it when I mean, if I use it, it's because I'm like, it has to get used. Normally I'm between 28 and 50.
Yeah.
90, maybe sometimes I have a 25 mm also. So, but most of the time, I hardly ever go beyond the 50.
Yeah.
Because, I'm not coming to steal a photograph. Get to know the person.
Yeah.
Get to hear their story.
I love the way you said that as well, to steal a photograph, because that's what you're doing.
Yes,
if you're not getting that consent, you're just stealing the photograph. Yeah.
I mean, my hobby is stealing photographs, don't get me wrong. But I steal photographs when nobody has anything to lose. If I'm on the beach and people are having fun, I like to get some candid. So
sure.
I enjoy that.
Yeah.
But when there are sensitive issues at stake, I would like to be more respectful and slow down and get to know the people.
So on a wider scale, how do we as creatives, because I feel like we could do it in any sphere, how do we retell the story of the continent? How do we, because we talking, the whole of the continent has been misrepresented, and like there's no point of just saying for South Africa, because it's everywhere. When I went to Malawi, the number of messages I got, people asking me what charity was I working for, what missionary was I with. I'm like, bro, I'm on holiday. Like I'm here because it's a beautiful place. Like we need to change the way you're thinking because it's so narrow-minded. So how do we retell this story? What can we do as creatives?
It's a long journey. It's a long journey, and it helps to have that in perspective also. To get here, people have to understand that the perception we have about Africa was part of a bigger agenda. Yeah, the agenda of colonialism. Yeah. And slavery. To be able to treat, they say you call a dog a bad name, then you hang it. If you want to, otherwise, then you don't have to deal with a conscience issue. So to be able to justify the inhumanity and the gross exploitation of the continent for so long, they had to have rhetoric that justified all of that. So a lot of the early photographs and their approaches were really bad, and those became the norm. But it's been going on for over 400 years. It's about over 400 years of negative representation. You're not going to change that in a day, And sometimes when people think of counteracting that, they quickly would go to only doing positive stories, only beautiful things.
That's definitely a space I've found myself in.
No, that also doesn't work. Just do the story, just be honest with yourself and dig deep and get to know the people. If you get to know the people, listen, Africa is amazing. The people are truly amazing. If you get to know them, you'll end up with a very beautiful story. It's just what it is, and a lot of people on the continent may not have money, but we have a lot of social capital, what we call social capital, that belief in humanity and in the other, so when we say, hello, how are you? Especially you went to Malawi. When people say, how are you? They are waiting for an answer.
That's true.
And when I go to the villages in Ghana, sometimes I sneak in and sneak out, because once they start with, how are you? It goes to, how's your mother? And if they know your mother, you're in trouble, because they'll ask about the last time we heard she went here, how did the trip go? How's your father? And we heard his younger brother was sick, how is he?
Wow.
And after they've gone through all of that with you, you're also supposed to check up on them, get to know.
You're there the whole day. Your camera's flat now.
Oh, yes. yes. You know, and
That's
it
so
has a
good.
way of slowing you down.
Yeah.
You know, I experienced a bit of that in Mali, in Segun, a while back, where they have no respect of time as we know it.
Yeah.
So they say, oh, come in the morning, we'll go to the farm and return, so come about, whatever. And then we get there for 2 hours, they hadn't come back from the farm. And then we saw them coming, and there was no urgency in
Mm.
how they were walking. You know, they were so laid back,
Yeah.
as they say, no rush in Africa.
Yeah.
But they come, and then I noticed something that was so special. When they came, we had their 100% attention. 100%. There wasn't, oh, let me quickly do this. Oh, let me
Yeah.
quickly reply to this text message. No. When they were
Mm.
with us, they were with us. They were totally present,
Yeah. Wow.
totally there for us till everything was done. I'm like, wow, this is how we're supposed to live. You know,
Mm.
now everybody is becoming ACDC or ADD, attention
Yeah.
deficiency.
Yeah.
You
It's true.
know, all of us are becoming, because you have to, and we never really pay proper attention to anything. You know,
Mm.
when we say, how are you? Nobody answers that question honestly,
Yeah.
because they know you're not interested in actually hearing how they are. You know, it's
Mm.
just a courtesy. How are you? I'm fine. But
Mm.
are you truly fine?
Yeah.
Especially with COVID-19 happening, people are locked up in their rooms, in their homes and little apartments, and they can't step out. And if they already are vulnerable, I'm really worried for people who are battle depression and have some psychotic, you know, related
Mm.
issues, bipolar and all that, because it is scary
Yeah.
for any such person to be trapped indoors for so long,
Yeah.
you know. So we need to, yeah, there are virtues on this continent that will help save humanity.
Yeah.
The excessive greed that is destroying the world, you know, COVID-19 happens and the atmosphere is getting clearer. People are seeing stars in their neighborhoods at night for
Yeah.
the first time.
Yeah.
There is very, very little pollution and all that. But why is the pollution happening? Why is all? Because we
Yeah.
want more and more. We are like the grave, you know. The grave never says enough.
Sure.
Like a, you know.
Well, there's one thing
Um,
you can say about this virus, and although it doesn't affect us all the same, the one thing it does do is it affects all of us. You know, it just makes you realize we're not so different as we think.
no, we're not.
I
We're
think
not.
one of my fondest memories of last year was we were visiting coffee farms in Tanzania, and we were
Okay.
staying in some little huts on the side of Mount Kilimanjaro in an area called Tarakia, and it was like a Sunday morning. I could hear some. I thought it was someone speaking on a megaphone. I'm
Hmm.
like, what is that sound? Like, it's so early in the morning. So I
Hmm.
asked one of the ladies who was working. She's like, no, it's like one of the big churches of the village. Like, it can't be this
Ah,
big because the village is tiny. So
small.
I was like, can I go? She's like, yeah, sure. So this guy rocks up, no joke, a little motorbike. I couldn't really communicate with him because I didn't speak the language. I didn't speak Swahili. He didn't speak English, but he drove me there to this it looked like a tiny shed. And as you're getting closer, we're driving on this little scooter, and you can just hear this bellowing sound of these guys singing. And I'm not gonna lie, it was not good singing. This was not the worship I was used to. But
Yeah.
I got in this little church, and I just remember people were piling in, and I think that was the moment when I was like, people have been telling us we are so different, but we're so similar because we all
Of
here. I
course.
don't need to know the words right now. We all here worshiping the same God, you know.
Of
Like
course.
we're
Of
all here,
course.
and we've just been told this lie that we're all so different, and that us doing this over here is so far removed from what you're doing there. But I
No.
was in this room, I was like, you know what? We're all the same. There's so much more that unites us than separates us. It was the most beautiful moment. It's the one thing I remember most about Tanzania.
And I mean, I tell people every day that when when Jesus said, "A kingdom that is divided against itself will not stand."
Mm.
Anything that divides people, we have to look at and look at again.
Mm.
Whether it's religion, whether it is gender, whether it is identity,
Mm.
because the objective of it is to weaken us.
Yeah.
When Christians think of heaven, it's a place where we'll all be united.
Mm.
From every nation, from every tribe, from every
Sure.
clime, worshiping the one God. But a lot of our divisions are also based on fear. Fear of based on what we don't know, fear based on stories we've heard.
Yeah.
And that's why knowledge is powerful. Because you've got to experience this in Tanzania yourself. When you are somewhere else in the world and somebody says something ignorant about Tanzania, you can correct them. That's the power. That's the power of knowledge. Yeah, but anything that divides, we have to. I tell people every day that one of Africa's biggest problems is that we are too divided. We focus too much on our differences,
Sure.
on our tribes, on our cultures, on our languages. But we have to look at our similarities also.
Mm.
We have to look at our similarities because that is where the strength lies.
Yeah.
When Africa was colonized, they deliberately drew the borders in such a way that it will be very difficult for us to unite. So, for example, I live in Ghana. Ghana was colonized by the English.
Yeah.
To our right, you have Togo, which was French.
Mm-hmm.
To our north was Burkina, which was
Mm-hmm.
French. To our left was Cote d'Ivoire, which is French. And then when you get to the other side of Cote d'Ivoire, they are English. If you get to the other side of Togo, there is Benin, but it's a tiny country. Then you have Nigeria, and they are English. So,
it's a mess.
Yeah, it's a big mess. A lot of people think Ghana and Nigeria are next door neighbors. But we are not. There are two countries between Ghana and Nigeria.
Yeah.
But because we are both Anglophone, because we both speak English, we relate.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it helps to understand that. It helps to understand that, and also for the church, for Christians, we shouldn't be so obsessed with all these denominations. Over 2,500, maybe more. Denominations of the Christian faith. So I'm like, okay, exactly what you believe that's so different that you can't worship together.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, because the Sabbath is a Saturday. I'm like, okay, so if you meet on Friday, God won't show up.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So we all have to, because there are a lot of, there's this thing I say, because you're Christian, I'll tell you this. I like to tell Christians that anytime they are reading the Bible and they see the word stronghold, they see the word stronghold. So, for example, the Bible will tell you the weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but they are mighty through God to the pulling down of every stronghold and to the casting down of every imagination and every high thing that exalts itself against the knowledge of God. And I tell them, anytime you see the word stronghold, replace it with culture. It's the easiest way to. There are two ways to explain stronghold easily. The first one is anything that holds you strongly is a stronghold. So addictions will come under strongholds. But another way to look at stronghold is just replace it with the word culture.
Yeah, wow.
Why? Because culture is what has become our norm to the extent where we don't even question whether it is right or wrong.
Sure.
It is our norm. So, for example, when I was working on fistula in Mali, fistula is this disease that women get if they are underdeveloped, normally in labor, when they are giving birth, where basically the skin, the flesh between the vagina and the anus rip, and it's terrible. It's a very terrible condition. And it's a very common situation in Mali. And after talking to doctors, talking to people who suffer the condition and all that, I noticed what the problem was. It was culture, So it's a medical condition, but the root cause is culture. Why? Because girls are getting married off right when they hit puberty.
Yeah.
So 13, 14, they get married. By 14, 15, they are having their first baby.
Yeah.
And their body is not developed enough.
Mm-hmm.
But at the root of that is a belief system where there's this high premium on virginity. Every parent wants their daughter to marry as a virgin. Otherwise, it's a scandal for the family, or she will bring shame. So the moment you become a woman, and she's nowhere near a woman at the age of 13, they marry you off. So I was telling them, listen, if you really want to battle fistula in this country, you have to address your culture. Change the culture. You don't need doctors specialized in stitching up women. Yes, that's important for the ones who have already fallen victim to it. But if you want to get to the root of it, change your culture. Yeah. Let your daughters go to school. Let them marry at 18, at 20. Let them marry at any age when they are ready. Not at 13 and 14, And for a lot of the issues generally in life, for Christians also, a lot of it is based on our belief systems. Things we have believed that are not necessarily true, but they are an impediment, They are an impediment to us becoming who God says we can be. An example of this in scripture will be when the apostle Peter was praying in Simon the tanner's house, and he had a vision where a sheet was rolled and he was told, kill and eat. And there were reptiles on there and all sorts of creatures. And he said, I'm a Jew, I don't eat anything that's unclean. And God says, these are things I've sanctified. How dare you call them unclean? He was a Jew. He was growing up, he was told, you don't eat this and you don't touch that and you don't go here. And these people are like that. And God says, no, I'm doing a new thing. So he had to change his thinking. And all of us are victims to this. Every human being on earth, if you grow up in a particular culture, go to a certain kind of school, read certain kinds of books, you would have a certain world view. And at some point, you notice that some of the things you believe clash with God's destiny for your life. And you'd have to yield them, and you'd have to allow yourself to grow up. Otherwise, it becomes difficult.
And we have to actively be thinking to change that culture.
It's important. It's important.
Even
when we talk
work,
about surrendering to Christ. Oh, yes. I mean, as a photographer also, I've had people tell me your photos are too beautiful. They are not traditional photojournalism. I'm like, what is traditional photojournalism? You want to see blood?
Exactly.
People die. What is it? So, yes, we always have to confront culture.
Wow.
It's the first thing. And this is a very, very important conversation. There are Christians who haven't found the love of their life because the love of their life is from a different race or a different tribe or a different this, and they can't allow themselves to think of the possibility of dating somebody from that race. And God says, your destiny is in China. Or in Zimbabwe or in Ghana. And like, I don't touch unclean or whatever unclean is to you. Says, no, kill and eat. That's your destiny. All of us. Some can't tolerate a female boss, the idea of a woman as their boss. They can't live with it. So God will deliberately throw you into one, and he won't just give you a female boss. He'll give you a very cheeky, nasty one. Until you yield and realize that in Christ Jesus there's neither male nor female, Jew nor Greek, bond or free. We are all one, until you become a respecter of people and you judge people by the content of their character, not by their gender. But it's a journey for all of us. 100%. I haven't figured it all out. Every day I have to confront myself with what I believe and what I think. And sometimes you will never know what you actually think until a situation comes up.
Well, gosh, you've got so much wisdom, because even from this chat, you've just taught me our job. It's to seek the truth and to tell the truth, but it's also to change the culture. Like if those two things, if we can do those two things through our work, then we're going to help to change the narrative of our continent.
It's important, yes. It's important. It's the only way. It's the
Yeah.
only way. But also, this is how we would also find fulfillment
Yeah.
and peace, you know, because there's this thing I say about, I don't know if you've ever bought anything that was a counterfeit, if let's
Some
say your
fake
favorite,
trainers.
yeah, fake trainers or
Yeah.
fake Rolex,
Yeah.
how much do you pay for a fake?
Yeah.
£5?
Yeah.
5 quid, 10 quid, and then the original is like £5,000.
Yeah.
Nobody pays so much for a fake. And this is why it's also important to confront God and get deeper in Him till you discover His purpose for your life, what your mission is, and why you are here. If you can live an authentic life, people will pay you for being an original.
Yeah.
Too many people want to be like somebody else. And nobody pays so much for a fake. If you're going to sing like Beyonce, I would rather give the money to Beyonce.
Yeah.
If I can't afford her, then I'll consider you. But that's if I can't afford her.
Yeah.
So
it's very true.
So
people gonna
but be original. Be original. Especially because photography, we are using the same tools.
Yeah.
If you said documentary photography between a Canon, a Nikon, a Sony, a Fuji, a Leica, and between 16 and 200 we are all using the same kind of equipment, and so if you don't have a very strong mind and a very strong sense of self and purpose, your photos are just going to be like somebody else's photos.
Exactly.
Your stories are
the one thing you can't copy is my heart behind it.
Fantastic.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
That's your selling point, I guess. That's your selling point.
It's your uniqueness. It's your uniqueness. It's your essence.
I remember I was working for someone very early on when I was doing photography. I remember them telling me, "You're never going to get anywhere in this industry being a nice guy," and it sat with me for so long. It sat with me, and I was like, I just not sure about this. Like that goes against what I've been taught. And it was only a couple of years later when I realized that the only reason I've had different brands come back to me and keep employing me is not because I'm the best photographer, but it's because they enjoy working with me. It's because I'm a nice guy. And I just realized I almost had a moment of feeling sorry for this guy because I'm like, but you had it backwards. Like the very reason they employed me again was because it was me, they employed me for me. It was a great lesson to learn.
It's an important one. I hope our viewers and listeners will remember that, especially in the photojournalism world. You hear too many bad stories about these icons, these superstars, and most of them are very nasty people. So young people coming up who get to assist them and think, the only way to be
That's
great
the way
is to be a narcissist. Is to be a narcissist. No, the only way to be great is to be authentic. Be true to yourself and to your convictions.
That is so good.
The right people will come along and they will appreciate your work and they will pay you good money for what you stand for and for how you see.
Yes. Amen.
It may take time though, but it pays off.
Good. There's so much more I could say, but it's just telling me there's only a minute left before this thing cuts me off. There's so much more I could go into, but I really just want to say, I appreciate you taking your time to have this conversation so much. I've admired your work for so long, but even more so now, admire you for who you are and for the value that you're bringing to our industry, because it's people like you who honestly are paving the way for us, and we just want to learn from you. So I'm so grateful for this conversation.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. It's really been a big pleasure having this conversation. God bless you.
Thank you so much. You too, brother.
Thank you to everybody who tuned in.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Take care, man.
See you soon, bro.
Cheers. Yeah, take care. Bye.
How do I do this? This thing, it's frozen. Okay, and yes. yes, 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 yes,